Hello everyone and thanks for watching. And today we are in the last episode of season 4, episode 6, and we're gonna go to France once more. It's been a while, but today we're gonna go to the Loire. And our guest is Ivan Massonnat from Domaine Belargus, and he will be joining us shortly. So let's wait a minute until Ivan is ready. He was just wrapping up a call, so I expect him to drop in any minutes. Today, as I said, the Loire, so France again. It's actually the first time we're visiting this region, and we're gonna drink one of the cuvées that they make over there. Chenin Blanc is the grape of choice at the Domaine Belargus, and today we're gonna taste the Ronceray. But I already see Ivan, so let's get him into the show. Let's connect him, and I think there we are. And yes, we have a connection. Hi, Ivan. Can you hear me?
Hey, yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Let me put the volume up a little bit because it's on my end, but I think we've got a good connection there. How are you doing?
Very good.
Very good. Thanks. Thanks for making some time on your busy schedule because we will talk a little bit about that later. But it's since a few years you started this project, but it's ever expanding and you're always busy. So it's great that wanted to make some time to talk with us about the Loire and about Belarus and
Pleasure.
about yourself.
Pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. Very kind of you.
Yeah. Today, I already explained to the audience we're going into France again. It's been a while. I was thinking the last time when I did, I had a guest from France. We were in the south. We were actually in the Châteauneuf-du-Pape, so very different area, but also very nice, obviously. But it was long due that we wanted to go back to France, and Loire is on the list because of the great Chenin Blanc, which we're going to talk about today, amongst others. But let's start with the introduction from your side. For those of you who don't know you, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background, and then we will go into the domain and about the region.
Sure. And thanks again for inviting me. Well, I guess the easiest way to introduce myself is to say that I'm pretty much like 80% of your audience, probably. So I'm a wine enthusiast. My passion for wine grew as a young adult, but it really was connecting me with my childhood because until I was 18 years old, I used to live in a small village in the Savoie region in the French Alps. And my grandfather was farming the family vineyard. And although I never drank his wine at the time, actually the memories of my childhood were somehow connected with winemaking. So as an adult, when I tasted wine, I wanted to see how it was made, and then I connected with winemakers, and I went down into cellars, and I was instantly hooked. I was like, "This is fascinating, and I want to understand how this is being made. How do you
It's
do it?"
magic.
Yeah, the magic of fermentation, the odors. I remember the odors in the cellar, and I was feeling right. And I was like, "Okay, this is it." So my whole adult life was more or less uh, dedicated to this passion, which meant I read a lot. Obviously, I bought a lot to taste and discover and sort of discover my own taste along the way. My own taste, by the way, was for, I would say, northern type of wine, so single grape variety. In France, as you know, you've got two halves. The northern part is really about single grape varieties and then terroir wines, whereas the south part is more about blending. And there's nothing wrong with either of the, but my taste, personal taste, was for the northern part of France. Burgundy is the region that really sort of made it fascinating for me. Today, by the way, I'm in Beaune, so I'm very happy.
Ah, nice.
Yes,
You're lucky. I want to swap with you, but I have to be in Holland in the rain, so
yeah, no, but it's
we
so
can't all
Burgundy.
have what we want, right?
Burgundy is really a region I adore, and I grew some friendship there. So along the way, along this journey, I grew some friendship with some winemakers in Burgundy, and again, sort of try to understand how wine was being made. And then if I fast forward a little bit to Belargus to explain, 16 years ago, we bought a family house in the Loire Valley, in Chinon, actually. And at the time, frankly, my vision of the Loire Valley was the wrong one. I had the same view as the rest of the market, which was, well, Loire Valley wines, they're beautiful, excellent, but, it's more, it's value wines, everyday wines. And then I bought
pretty standard, not complex, or
yeah. I mean, you could say I was snobbish at the time. I thought, the great wines were in Burgundy, in Bordeaux, in Champagne, etc. And then I discovered very quickly that it couldn't be any further from the truth, because the history of this region, the Loire Valley, is amazing. It's one of the oldest wine history in France, exactly like Burgundy and the other key regions. It had those two single grape varieties that I love, Cabernet Franc and Chenin. And actually, I discovered and really started to study and understand how, what made this region so special, because the Loire Valley is a world in itself. It's very wide, 1,000 kilometers long is what the river is. We got, I think, 51 appellations, something like 55,000 hectares of vineyards. So it's a huge region. So you have to understand it sub-region by sub-region.
It's far from the same. I mean, there's a lot of differences if you really dive into it.
Absolutely. And so basically, the first thing because if I fast forward to my, I would say, taking the big plunge and creating the estate, because I had this dream in my mind that one day I could maybe have my own estate. The first obvious choice was Chinon, because I knew Chinon, my house was there, we love this area. And I tried actually for quite some time to acquire an estate, which was exceptional in my view. I mean, I love this place, and I tried to acquire it. And after a full year of working on the project, I came to the conclusion that the seller was not ready to sell. He was pretending to sell, but actually had unreasonable expectations. So basically, I said, all right, I'm going to close the Chinon file, and where else could I buy some vines? And then I saw something interesting, which is there are parts of the Loire, Chinon being one of those, where you have actually few properties for sale. If you look at Vouvray, Montlouis, Saumur, Chinon, these appellations were quite fine, and basically it got very few estates for sale. But then I discovered that if you move a bit west and you look at Anjou, actually here you find many estates that are for sale. At least that was the situation, talking about 6-7 years ago. And I said, oh wow, that may be interesting, and the reason was very simple, because Anjou, what we call black Anjou, Anjou Noir, we'll probably talk about that later. That part is the historical part, I would say, where the sweet wines of the Loire, the most renowned sweet wines, were being produced around the Léon River and the Loire River. And because sweet wines are not that popular anymore, a lot of properties are have to reinvent themselves, and sometimes the next generation doesn't want to take over their parents' business, and property end up being on the market. Anyway, so I said, all right, if there are many things, maybe amongst these things, because I wanted to build something a bit special in terms of terroir.
Different.
And it's not so easy to find great terroirs. So basically I was looking, and I said, now I need to narrow down my research to this sub-region, Anjou Noir, and then look at everything. And I spent 2 years literally looking at everything that was for sale. And then,
so you walked a lot in the vineyards, looking in the soils, talking to the people, what's going on.
Meeting with the local winemakers to understand how the region works. Also understanding the terroirs, because as we will explain, it's a very complex region with small appellations. That's the only place in the Loire Valley which you have tiny appellations, micro appellations, I would say. So it took me a bit of time to understand. And then, I met with a few people that were selling their estates, and I studied 1 project, 2 projects, 3 projects, some deeper than others, sometimes spending, 4-6 months on trying to do it. And nothing was crystallizing, but it was very, very interesting along the way. And then it's quite fascinating, because then one thing happened, one meeting. So one of the very, well-known winemakers in the region, Patrick Baudouin, introduced me to another one who was retiring. I knew the name, Jo Piton. It was a famous name, but I had never met with him. And on this day of February 5th, 2018, so this is 2018, February.
You remember the date?
I do.
It's an iconic date for you.
It changed my life in a way.
Yeah.
It did change my life. So I meet with him. It was one of these wine fairs. So I meet with him on the Monday evening. We get on well, but I would say like with many winemakers, you tend to end up meeting with them and liking them. But then he says, tomorrow morning, come and see the vineyards before the wine fair reopens. And I did it. And that changed my life because he took me to one special place, which is a place which he spent 20 years of his life reviving, which is an exceptional terroir, a truly exceptional terroir. It's a very steep hillside, I think 70% slope, that had been abandoned after the war because it was too steep. But that used to be
too difficult to work
with vineyards. Exactly. Too low yields, too difficult to work. But he had found postcards of the 1920s, so a century earlier, where it was covered of vineyards. That special place. So he said, if
it was possible, then we can bring it back.
Exactly, and because this is a south-facing hillside, it's so anyway. Long story short, is I fell in love with that place, and I said, all right, this is where I'm going to start my project. It was Coteaux des Treilles. So somebody asks about Treilles. Yes, the answer is Treilles. It was Treilles. And don't get me started on Treilles. It's an amazing place. It's part of a natural
reserve.
We
can plan more shows if you want, but we have to split all the vineyards in one show.
Yes, exactly. So I'll not go into that because it's only what's fascinating is that it's only the beginning of the story because Jo, so that was clearly the jewel of his estate. Yeah. Very quickly, we got on extremely well and it was obvious we wanted to do it together, I would say. And I needed somebody like him to help me. And basically, from that point onwards, then there was an alignment of stars like I could not believe it. When I look back, and frankly, if I had wanted to do what we ended up doing, it would have never worked. But what did happen is that in March 2018, Jo and I sort of decide to do it together. 2 months later, I am able to acquire something which had been on the market for 10 years, which was an exceptional terroir on the Quart de Chaume appellation. It's a nearby village. Quart de Chaume is a sweet wine appellation, but a very special one. It's a tiny one, 40 hectares, and it's the only one in the whole Loire Valley. So I talked earlier about the number of
the very big Loire.
This one is tiny, 40 hectares, but it's the only one with the Grand Cru status. So it's an amazing one. And that person was selling a quarter of the appellation. So 10 hectares out of the 40 on the 3 historical lieux-dits, really, including the main one called L'écart, which is the name of the plot that gave the name to the appellation. And so 2 months later, I was able to acquire this. And another 2 months later, it's impossible to have predicted it could happen.
Yeah, if you wanted to do it again like this, it would not work.
It would have been impossible because 2 months later, I was able to acquire vineyards on Savenière. Savenière is another tiny appellation, only 150 hectares, very well known, and the wines are quite sought after. So normally you never have any vineyards for sale. And here, I'm not going into details, but we were able to assemble that. So in a 6 months period, we were able to acquire in total more than 20 hectares. Total is 24 hectares of Chenin terroirs that are arguably some of them are quite exceptional. And all this represent different, because the Anjou Noir is a geological chaos. So from one plot to the next, you've got very different types of subsoils, of course, different types of steepness, as I said, different types of orientations, so south, north, etc. So in a way, it was a collection of plots that we were able to put together. The grape variety was 100% Chenin. That's what I wanted, single grape. So I was able to think of the few plots that we would express. And So basically, Joe and I sort of worked on the project together during 2018.
Yes.
So changing the equipment, recruiting the team, put together a young team. Let's say they were maybe 28 years old on average at the time, 10 people at the time, all young, passionate. And we came together along that year of 2018. I remember that on September 5th, 2018, I became the legal owner of the vineyards. And on the 10th of September, so 5 days later, we were cutting grapes.
So back in the vineyards.
And actually, what we'll be tasting today, we will be tasting together because I have it in front of me as well, was harvested only 5 days after becoming, because this is 2018 vintage you have, only 5 days after I became the legal owner. So it was a bit of a crazy project at start.
A lot of things happened in a short time, but you already worked on it for a long time in the end.
Yes, I very often, and before focusing on Anjou, or even before looking in Chinon, etc., I was already for the previous 10 years probably building my understanding of the wine world. Because one thing I did not do is underestimate the challenges of the wine world. A lot of people dream about wine and think it's a beautiful world and romantic. You just have to do nice wine or great romantic, and you make great wine and it will be fine.
Every vintage is a success.
Could be further away from the truth. Yeah, it's and it took me more than 10 years probably to understand the complexities of this world. How many people are in the chain, and how, I would say, numerous the great wine estates are in this world. I mean, producing great wine is, of course, it's our objective, and if we succeed in doing so, that's great. But even if we succeed in doing so, it's the beginning of the journey. It's probably 10% of what you have to achieve, because then you have to make it known, then you have to sell it, and then once you've sold the first bottle, you need to sell the second bottle. So people need
and you set the standard, and even if you don't want to, the standard always needs to, for the audience.
Yes, exactly. So it's anyway. So the long story short is that I had prepared for many years, and then it took that.
It came together in 6 months.
Yes, exactly. And I think if we had thought it through, I think it would have scared us, but we didn't.
Probably you would not have done it.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes in life, when it feels right, you should go ahead and do it.
I mean, that's what I like about the story. Of course, we could take 1,000 angles for this story. I mean, you're now the last episode of season 4, so I had quite some guests, and every domain or every winemaker has his own story, obviously. But when we started talking and I called you, it was very interesting because I looked at it and I didn't know which angle to pick, because you were already explaining the difficulty of Loire and all the terroirs. Then there's also the angle of dry Chenin Blanc, making dry Chenin Blanc in sweet Chenin Blanc country, I would say.
We can talk about
your personal story. But there's also your personal story. I mean, you didn't mention, but for a long time in your professional life, you also you had a very different profession. So you were not always, you were working on the wine,
I still do. I mean, this is part of my, I'm doing this, and I decided to launch this project as I still had my day job in Paris. I work in finance, in private equity. And, my wife and I discussed about it, obviously long before pulling the trigger. There were 2 scenarios. One scenario was I wait till I retire and then it becomes my retirement project. But who knows when I will retire, if I will be healthy, etc. And the alternative was to start it, I would say, on my spare time and devoting a lot of my spare time to it. And I'm so grateful that my wife allows me to do this, because it takes pretty much all my spare time. So it's a big effort that the family, my wife and my 2 children are making, but it's such a passion that I think it's worth it. And one day I will be retired, and then in the meantime I will have built something which is I think interesting and fulfills me quite a bit. and also gives, I think, everybody involved in the adventure. It's a big adventure, Belargus. I think a lot of thrill, and I think we are all
So you're
excited.
not just looking at yourself as the owner of a domain. You're also looking at yourself, and this I already read before in other interviews. It's really a long-term vision and project for you. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
you're building something where you know that you will obviously not be the last one, and
yeah,
that
yeah.
will be part of Belargus. I mean, everything you
That's.
do is within keeping in mind that
I
you
mean,
move
I
forward.
half jokingly, I always tell the team that I have a 100-year plan for Belargus.
Yeah,
In 100 years, the Loire as a region has reached its full potential. It has gone back to what it was centuries ago.
yeah.
Maybe it's a debate for another day, but the perception, the market perception of the Loire has been built in the 20th century, which was itself resulting from the post-phylloxera era. And the vision of the market today comes from this production of a lot of everyday wines that are interesting,
Yeah.
But if you step back and look at the previous centuries, and if you go back to the Middle Age, not to mention earlier, but let's say to the Middle Age, you understand what is the Loire. It is a land of noble wines, very hierarchical view of terroirs with two great varieties. And I think in 100 years, the Loire will be renowned for this and will be, I think, on an equal footing with the other great French wine regions, Burgundy,
There is a
Bordeaux.
reason why you have so many castles in the Loire, right?
Yes,
And you're a
absolutely.
gateway to Paris. From if you go from the
Abs-
sea, you go to Paris. This is everything went with
Absolutely.
the boats, and it had to go over the river.
Absolutely. But the story of Anjou is a very famous French province until the French Revolution. In the 12th century, the Duke of Anjou is also King of England, Henry II,
Yeah,
Plantagenet. So the wines from Anjou have been on the
spread.
royal tables for centuries and centuries. In the 18th century, 17th and 18th, it's the Dutch, by the way, who make these wines famous because they use the rivers to take the wines to Northern Europe, let's say. So we owe a lot to the Dutch. I think I should mention it today.
Happy to hear that because we're not that good yet in winemaking, but we're good in doing business.
Exactly. And I think at the time, because at the time, we're talking about the world until the 19th century, industrial sugar didn't exist.
Yeah.
So anything sweet had a lot of value. And the Anjou region has a natural, I would say, setup, landscape to produce sweet wine. So those wines were very famous, very exclusive, obviously.
Sought after, yeah.
Exactly. And what is so? The 100-year plan is the Loire is back to where it should be. Within the Loire, I think Anjou, because it has a very precise definition of terroir, I think will be recognized as probably one of the most attractive regions, rare, I would say,
Yeah.
region, intense regions. And hopefully within that region, Belargus is one of the renowned estates. But it will take 100 years, okay? So it will be generations
that
after
will take
generations.
time. But I believe in it as well. And also, you have another thing going on for yourself is the climate and the changes that, plus the trend
Yeah,
that people
yeah,
like more the cool climate wines. I mean,
yeah.
this is becoming more and more a trend. So, in demand side, this is also working into your advantage. I know that you are trying to bring the team to a different wine region every year to also experience some different styles of winemaking and grapes, etc. So I can recommend you to, if you don't know him yet, to go to outside France and go to Germany and go to Van Volksem. I don't know if
Oh,
you
yes.
know the winery,
I know
but what's
I know the
interesting,
name, but I've never tasted actually.
if you go to Van Volksem and you talk to Roman, the owner, he has also a vision, and his vision is to bring back Riesling
Mm-hmm.
back to what it was before the First World War, or let's say
Oh,
the time where it was on the menus of the big hotels and restaurants as the most expensive wines of the world, because the Rieslings were there, the same.
of course.
So he
Yeah,
has the
of
same
course.
vision
Exactly.
of bringing this
Wow.
back. If you, and I'm sure that you guys will get along very well, and there was a lot to learn there. So Van Volksem is
That's very interesting.
same vision.
Very
Um,
interesting.
Today we're going to drink wine, and I'm just going to show it again. You mentioned you have a bottle yourself as well. Some people
I do.
bought it, and they are also, I hope, already enjoying it, because I always say don't wait until we start drinking, because it takes us time to get started, and then why would you wait, right? It's a wine to enjoy. I have to say, Ronseré. Am I pronouncing it sort of
Yeah,
right, or because my
yeah,
French
yeah,
is not that
absolutely. Yeah,
perfect? But
no, no, it's very good.
what I like about it, but we will go to the different wines that you offer and that your portfolio consists of. But what I like in general is that on the label for everybody to see, there's already a nice summary of what the wine is about and what the vineyard is about, so where is this from. So it's really nice for people to see. In a glimpse, you can see what is the hectares, amount of hectares of the vineyard, the elevation, the orientation, the soil type. So my French is so good that I already found out all these things, but that's really, I think that's really nicely done. Besides that, I have to show this as well, and it's too difficult, but everybody that I think if you buy a box, they're all in the box, right? You used to put them in a box if people buy
Yes.
a box. This is a map of the that you made it. You asked someone to make it, or was it it's a new design? Eh? It's not something that came back from something that's already it was
No,
existing. It's an
no,
artist that made it for you.
yeah, yes, because as a matter of fact, there was when you looked at for a map of Anjou, there was none. There was just no map of Anjou.
Yeah,
So I said, okay, let's draw one.
yeah,
So yeah, and we found a
it's
great
beautiful.
artist. Yes, and then we put a lot of details in this map, and everything on this map is kind of related to the estate. It's our vines, but it's a few other things that are hidden in there.
So for
Very
people, it's
important
easy
also
if
for
they
me.
see this map, then they get a good overview of what your Belargus is
E-
about.
e- Exactly, and my idea was that to me, wine is much more than fermented grapes. Wine is about culture. Wine is about landscape. It's about geology. It's about gastronomy. It's about and you need to visually imagine where the
Yeah,
wine comes from. And the map was a way to sort of you see the two rivers, the Loire River, the Léon River. You see the hillsides. You can guess the slopes. You see the orientation, south, north, west. And that's what we wanted to bring on the label because when you think about it, Chenin is the instrument, and
yeah.
basically
It's a vessel,
the
sort of.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
nothing else.
So yeah, no, but
Yeah,
I think it really helps. And to be honest, I mean, I know you also have a business background, and I have a marketing background. But if you think about it, it's stupid that not more people do it like that. Because for everybody who knows a little bit about wine and has interest and has been to wineries and has been in vineyards, the moment when you go to a winery and you go to a vineyard the first time, you start understanding how grapes are grown and what is the importance of elevation, soil type, etc., etc. And it's difficult if you've never been in a vineyard or at a domain
yeah,
to envision that. And well, we're talking about all these things, about these special terroirs, etc., etc. But for those people that have never been there, and a lot of people, they just come in a store, they buy a wine, or they come in a restaurant, they have to listen to the sommelier and they will tell them a story, but don't have the possibility to make it visual. So I think the map is a great thing, and I wanted to highlight it because I think it's you're educating also the audience, I would say, your own audience with this.
yeah,
So very good, very good.
that's right.
But today, Rosé, and the first wine I had from you last year. This is how I came across the winery. It was the Roes. And this one we're not going to drink because this I put away safely. I was stupid enough not to buy more because there's more and more difficult to get the wines. But this is one of the other wines. But I was blown away about that one. But we will touch them based on that in a minute. But today we're drinking a cuvée. But maybe you can tell us a little bit first, and then we'll talk about the other
Sure,
ones about Monterey.
sure. Well, the this one comes from Quart de Chaume, which is the heart of the domain. It's half of the vineyards we have, a total of 10 hectares on Quart de Chaume and 2 on Chaume. And we blend them together to do this cuvée Ronceray. So Ronceray is a collective name. There are several estates producing Ronceray because today, because of the French administration, if you do a dry wine on these terroirs, you cannot call them Quart de Chaume or Chaume. it's obviously unfair, but that's I'm not going into the details today. In the
It's a
1990s,
law.
there was it's the law basically. So what we did, what the winemakers in the area did before my time, so to speak, is create this name, collective name called Ronceret. Ronceret is the name of an abbey, and it really relates to the history of Quart de Chaume because in the 11th century, so 1,000 years ago, the abbey was owning the vineyards on the Quart de Chaume side, and they were getting paid by the best quarter of the harvest. And in French, a quarter is l'écart. And basically, the plot, which is south-facing, middle of the hillside, is called l'écart. And that plot gave the name of the appellation. What is fascinating is that this mode of viticulture, where you live and you pay the rent, so to speak, with the best quarter of the harvest, was spread all across France in the Middle Age. And you have plots that are called l'écart pretty much all around France.
So to summarize, the best quarter sort of made the price that you get for, in the end, for your wine.
Yeah, and it was the part of the harvest that went to the landlord, so the best part. But what is interesting is that in that part of France, in Quart de Chaume, it became famous to go through centuries as the name of a wine. And in the 20th century, it became an appellation, okay, in its full right. And in 2011, a Grand Cru. So what I find very fascinating is that one area, one plot, over 1,000 years generates, I would say, an image for the wine which is lasting, and I find this very moving personally, because it's like I don't know, it's like I acquire a piece of the Histoire de France, and basically, so in reminding, or in order to be able to tell that story, the winemakers decided to call Ronceret a dry wine which is produced on either Chaume or Quart de Chaume. These are two appellations that touch each other. In total, it's 120 hectares, so it's still very small. And so we are making it. So our Ronceret comes from the Quart de Chaume part. And
you have a part of this vineyard, but it also means that the other winemakers that have other parts, if they make the dry wine, they will also name it a Ronceret, but then it will be not Domaine Belargus, but Domaine whatever is the
exactly.
Good job.
So the wine itself is it's a dry Chenin. So the winemaking is the same for all the cuvées. So I can describe it maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's Friday evening, I'm not spitting. So
there's no way I'm going to spit this. Not on any night, I will tell you. Delicious.
So the winemaking is very simple. We do as little as we can. So slow press. Then basically, without going into too many details, obviously natural yeast and the fermentations and the whole aging process happens in wooden containers, wooden barrels, double barrels, and food, big casks. And we have a mix, and basically the aging will be done without intervention. Once again, no steering, no racking. We leave the wine on its lees, and hopefully nothing happens. Obviously, we monitor it, etc. And then you push the aging. This one is I would say we have long aging policies on the estate. This one is the less long. It's 13 months, which is the minimum for us, and we go all the way to 36 months, so 3 years.
And that's interesting. Sorry to interrupt you now, because you have a very own way of defining when the wine is ready to be sold. And now we have the 2018, but the 2020 is coming before the 2019, correct?
Yes. On most of our terroirs, yes, it would be the case.
So you really monitor the wine, and then when it's ready, it's ready.
Yeah, and what is very important to understand is all the plots are the same, but the vintages make the wines very, very different. If you look at 19 and 20, very, very different vintages. 20 is a very balanced, drinkable vintage. It was the fermentation went like this. It became very, I don't know, there's a natural balance and elegance to the 2020 vintage, which makes it ready, I would say a normal one. 19, on the other hand, is completely different. 19 of all the vintages we've made, so three, I mean, we are the fourth one, but let's say we have three fully made in the cellar. 19 is clearly the greatest in quality terms in my mind, but it's the most concentrated one because it was hit by the frost very badly, 70% loss. And the wine that was born that year is very concentrated. Lots of
So
power.
the grapes that survived, they really got an intense.
Yeah, but I don't know how to explain it really. But the fact is that this is an extremely concentrated vintage. So a lot of power, but a lot of acidity also. So in my mind, those wines will be almost eternal. But on the flip side, it is our duty to age them for longer. Because we will, by keeping them in this reductive environment, so with no oxygen in their tanks, for longer on their leaves, in a way we are preparing them for a longer life, because life, as we all know, is oxidation. So
even for wine, not just for people.
Exactly. So we want to push that reductive phase for longer, so that then the wine can age for longer. And I think the 2019s, when we will bottle them, and as you know, we put wax on top, so the bottle is really sealed. I think they will age for many, many decades.
Yeah, just for the people to show, all of them have nice wax on it. So we talked about you're deciding with the team when the vintage is being released. You also said 2018 you started harvesting a few days, weeks, what was it, after you signed the contract?
5 days.
So 5 days, yeah, there you go. So that means, I mean, you buy the vineyard, you have to do with what it is. Of course, you have influence on it because then you have the winemaking process after that. And there was some things going on. I mean, you probably monitored the vineyard in the year before and show people knew everything about it, so there was not a surprise in there. But obviously, it's still, you're not 100% there yet with your vintage part of that. So, and I have to touch it. I can't go about it because it's a fact. The 2018 vintages, the first time when you got them reviewed by some of the better wine critics in the world. So just taking Robert Parker, but I could have taken any other. I mean, there's a lot of good wine journalists and critics in the world. You got amazing scores, but was this something that was already in your heads?
No.
Because, like I said, you start somewhere, but you don't know what that's going to bring, especially because you're making dry wines as well.
No, man, but I guess maybe we were a bit also lucky along the way. I don't know. Luck is a part of life. So what I do know is that there's been a lot of work and passion that has gone into this first vintage. And maybe as a thank you, the people tasting the wine said, actually, you guys did a fine job and we got nice scores. We were not looking for big scores. You know, it was the first vintage. I guess we were just very pleased. I mean, for the team, it was very, very satisfying. A bit humbled as well, because then it kind of puts us on the spot as well, day one.
Next year, you have to come back and better.
Of course,
that's how they say.
Absolutely, and that's what we are working towards. I think the area where we are most progressed is in the vineyards, because so as I explained, I bought 3 vineyards, Joe, and Joe has been organically farming for 20 years. But the other 2, one was in first year of conversion, the other one was conventional. So the viticulture was the first thing we needed to change, and 3 or 4 years after the fact, so now we are certified organically. We can see the difference in the grapes we harvested this year, I think, and last year also we started to see that. I don't know, more precision. It's like the picture we took in 2018 is a nice picture. I think in 2019, 2020, and hopefully as we go forward, it will become more and more precise. So same thing, same terroir, but more precise. And I think the viticulture, which takes so long to change, is where we will progress more. In the vineyard, in the vinification, the winemaking process, hopefully we'll progress, of course, but I think it's more marginal. I think where we truly can progress is in the vineyard.
I agree. I mean, plus you have to take into account that every vintage is different in terms of the climates, etc. So, and there is a trend over the years as well. So there are things that you can influence, there are things that you can't. But nevertheless, you got great recognition straight away. That's also, it's a blessing and a curse, because it's a curse for people. If they want to get the wines, it's difficult. And you also said 2019 was a difficult year for you, so it means in terms of volume and yield.
So did 2021. We have 4 vintages. 2 of them are minus 70% in volume. Okay, so that's also the reality of the winemaking world. Frost is a terrible enemy in the Loire Valley. It has hit us twice, and that's the real challenge we're facing, nature.
That's how it goes. But you, and we're not drinking that today, but you're also making sweet wine.
Yes.
The sweet wine, that one of them got 100 points.
Yeah.
So you could say a lot to me. You could say, okay, it's not about the scores, but 100 points with Robert Parker, Ivan, it's not... Yes. They don't give them away like on every corner of the street, right?
No, and we are really again humbled by this score. The wine itself is quite exceptional. We took the risk of making this wine. To do this kind of wine, you need to take risk with nature, because if you have one day
because this is not made every year.
No, I think you can make such wine every decade, more or less, because you need a back season, which is, I would say, perfect until the end. And we've had many nice back seasons over the last few years, but somewhere in October, it starts to go wrong. A little bit of rain, a little bit of this and that, and then forget about the big concentration. And in 2018, and to answer somebody, the cuvée is called Ultra, the one that got 100 points. It's when we do sweet wine, we don't do sweet wines every year. We do them in good years or exceptional years. 2018 was one of those. So here's luck, because it was the first vintage and it was an exceptional year for sweet wines. So what we do is, I would say it's a bit like in the German Mosel. We do it by level of concentration. And in the end, we produced 5 cuvées in 2018 in sweet. One was Léon, 16, 18 degree potential. So quite a bit of concentration, but very drinkable wine. Then one Chaume Premier Cru at 20, 22, so more, more complexity, more residual sugar. Then we did 2 Quart de Chaume in single plots, because the geology can also be felt in the sweet wines. That's because we have a large part of the Quart de Chaume. We said, let's move one step further and express Quart de Chaume in single plots. So we did 2. And then there was the 5th cuvée, is this cuvée called Ultra, which is 1 plot where we let it concentrate even further.
To the end. This is the one with the longest legs.
Exactly. And that one went all the way to 30 degree potential. To put it in a different way, when you had 1 liter of juice, 500 grams were sugar. All right,
sugar water.
Exactly. So it creates hey, salut Valentin. And it creates a wine which is really immortal, I think. And because
so in 2018, it gave you the vintage 2018 gave you a lot of options.
Yes, exactly.
Not just on the tree, but also on the sweet wines.
Yeah,
exactly. You basically got the, I would say, full portfolio, because that's not how it works, but everything that you at the moment would want to do.
Yeah, that I
was
wanted to
possible.
do. I was able to do it day one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the vision was very clear, and we worked for the whole year of 2018 thinking about what we would produce. So which plots, because we have, I don't know, 30 plots, or I can't remember. We didn't want to do 30 cuvées. It had no sense. Which plot would make sense? And that was so the plan was very clear, and then nature allowed us to go with the plan, I would say. But the plan was very, very clear day one.
Yeah. So back again, this one, and then we also see if we can get some questions. The question was, is it made with noble rot? That's the
The answer is
yeah,
yes, botrytis.
yeah.
All of except for Léon, the first one, which is partly botrytis, only partly. All the other ones are mostly botrytis, and all the Quart de Chaume and the Ultra, of course, is full botrytis.
Yeah. Okay. So, what can people expect when they? Because we talked about which wine shall we taste, and you immediately said Ronceray because this is the cuvée that is the best. Maybe
it's a very
business card or expression
yes,
of the
yeah. I mean,
domain.
our wines, we have 10 different cuvées in dry wine. So our wines are very, very different, and they go. I always think of them in terms of wine pairing, and they can really pair with things that are very, very different, all the way from raw fish to spicy dishes, right? And all the way.
So we can easily do an
cheese.
8-course or 10-course meal and
Yes,
take every course.
absolutely.
We can take one of your wines.
Absolutely, and I'm just talking about the dry wines. If you want to pair the sweet wines, you can also. So this one is, in my mind, middle of the range in terms of, I would say, flavor, complexity, balance. What people should not expect is a bone dry, super acidic Chenin. No, Quart de Chaume is a south-facing hillside. It's a very comforting wine. It's a very, it's, I don't know, I think it's very palatable, but at the same time, it's got, at the end of the mouth, it's got a very clean finish and a lot of sapidity. One sip will make you want the next one and maybe the one after, because you've got this saline finish and this slight bitterness on the tongue, which is very refreshing. So if you want, the mouth is kind of charming, but then nice kick at the end, and that's this balance which I like, because I think when you have just the right level of maturity of Chenin, you can get that tension, which pairs super well with cheese, meat, fish. This one you can pair it with, frankly, almost anything.
Yeah, and I don't want to use the word middle of the road, but I'm doing it anyway, because if you compare it to the rest of the portfolio, it's sort of, as you explained already, it's not on the outsides of everything, not on the outside of acidity, or for instance, sometimes one of the first things I took away from this one, but also from the Rouers, is the medicinal taste. So the magic that happens, and I think. I haven't tasted all of your wines, but I think that's something that comes from what's very typical also to the terroir that you guys have over there. So that is something that will come back, but it will be heavier or lighter, for instance, in the different cuvées or in the different wines that you have. So, of course, there is always something going on, but like you said, if you want to start somewhere, this would be a good opening in a tasting with Belargus.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good.
There's a question on botrytis, so it's up to 100%. For the 3 Quart de Chaume cuvée, it's 100%. For the Chaume, it's probably 80%, and for the Léon, it's maybe 20%.
Okay, good. Last week, I had a guest from Ribera del Duero, and we were talking about Bodegas Solo, and Javier Zaccarini, who is well known in Spain and also outside of Spain, because he was the business partner of Mariano Garcia in Alto in Ribera, and also started the Ocean project. So he is very well known with Tempranillo, but also with in the Rueda with Verdejo. And I asked him. I always ask people a question for the next guest, so you get off the hook, because it's the last episode of the season. So maybe I'll come back to you. I'm going to come back for season 5, and then I'm going to text you. But I asked him, okay, what do you want to ask Ivan? Because I explained him a little bit about the domain and about what you're doing, and then we were talking about he's working a lot with. At the moment, he's working with Tempranillo in his own bodega. But his question was, if we talk about the Chenin Blanc. We had quite an intense discussion about Tempranillo being the grape of Spain, and despite that being a lot of different regions in Spain have Tempranillo, but still managed to produce a very different Tempranillo wine. So although it's one grape that has very common characteristics that have been shared between different regions. There are still a lot of different expressions possible. But his question was, when you look at the Chenin Blanc, you think about, okay, where is the success of Chenin Blanc? And well, the first thing is Loire. The second part is Loire, and the third one would be Loire, and then maybe in the fourth place it would be South Africa. I don't know at the moment. There's some good things coming from there, but what does it mean for you? What does the Loire mean in combination with Chenin Blanc? So why is it that the Chenin Blanc is so successful? And I talked about it as the queen of the Loire.
That's a good expression. I think I might reuse that, steal that from you. But actually, it's
one bottle of Ultra, and then we're there.
No, but actually, you're putting. You mentioned South Africa. I think let's talk about Chenin, because if you think Chenin is the Loire's grape, actually you were right until the phylloxera crisis. If you look at, we have a lot of historical evidence that until the mid-19th century, Chenin was everywhere, especially in Anjou. It was all white and Chenin. Today, Chenin is about 20%. 60% in Anjou is Cabernet, because after the Second World War, they invested Cabernet d'Anjou, which is a sweet rosé, which was very popular at the time. So actually, the greatness of the Loire and the greatness of Chenin as the ambassador of the Loire is true in the old days, not so much in the last century. So to my earlier point, 100 years from now, I'm ready to bet that Chenin will be back in force in the Loire. But you mentioned South Africa. Did you know that in the Loire, in the whole Loire Valley, no, I think the statistic for the whole of France, but 90% is in the Loire.
Yeah.
In France, you have 9,000 hectares of Chenin. In South Africa alone, you have 18,000, sorry.
Yeah.
So twice as much. So basically, in Swartland, etc., they do some nice Chenin as well. So basically, I think Loire obviously was the home of Chenin. And I think it needs to reconquer its place. Yeah. And Chenin needs to go back on the great terroirs. There are many terroirs, especially on limestone. So we are not in the limestone area, but there are many areas, if you look at Saumur, etc., where the red grapes in the 20th centuries pretty much went everywhere, whereas there are a lot of terroirs that are white terroirs. And I think, again, 100 years from now, I think white will rule again in the Loire, and obviously Chenin will, I think, certainly for Anjou. And that's, but you see, it's a long history. We go back.
It takes time also to come back.
Exactly. You're dealing with viticulture.
It's good. It's good that a lot of Chenin Blanc is produced in South Africa, because for the market it's good. For the name of Chenin Blanc, it's good because it gets out in the open, and then now you start talking about reconquering it back and taking the terroir expression. Yes. But to get there needs to be volume as well. It's
exactly.
Just, so that's helping. But why is it so? Then why was it so successful, and why is there still a lot of potential to get it back in the Loire? What makes the terroir and the grape so such a good combination?
I think a grape variety is made for its home terroir, and in the Loire, Chenin is fantastic because it can express all its complexity. You can do dry, from the bone dry wines to sweet, to full sweet wines, bubbles. You can really do everything with the same grape variety. And there are very few grape varieties that are so versatile.
Yeah, I think of Riesling, and that's one that I think of.
Yes, Riesling would be the only one, probably.
Yeah. A good expressionist of the terroir, that's what it is.
Exactly. No real aroma, just a pure translator of terroir. So that's connection with the Loire, I think, will resonate and people will do it again. But keep in mind that hey, salut Emmanuel. Keep in mind that Chenin is a difficult grape as well. It buds early in the season, so basically you are very exposed to frost, and it matures late. So when you think about it from an agro,
a lot of risk in this.
Exactly. And compounded with that, it's a grape variety that can produce a lot. And the issue with Chenin is that very often it's pushed in terms of yields, and then it's very hard to make fine wines because it becomes very acidic, very light, And that's also the danger. I think you want to use Chenin to express the terroir. To do that, you need to manage your yields
You also
in such a way.
minimize the yields.
Exactly. Control them at least. And for all these reasons, it's a very difficult grape variety. And that's why it was not abandoned fully, but clearly it was diminishing for the whole 20th century. I think we're only at the beginning of the reconquest, and I'm ready to bet 100 years from now, it will be back where it should, which is on the big white terroirs.
A good chance. Let's jokingly call it the fool's grape because of all the work that it brings you and all the risk. The foolish queen, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But we talked about the queen, and I don't know if you want to talk about it. If you don't want to, just stop me there. But in the phone conversation that we had before, we talked about the queen. But your sights first were also on the king of the Loire, and you know what I mean now here.
Yeah.
But we'll spend a minute to talk about that as well. Because
no, but I will answer in a way.
we have a question.
One question on clay soil.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit, schist from a geological standpoint. Schist is a compression of clay. So in a way, when you have schist, when they degrade, you have some clay. But I would say it's not the best way to think of Anjou, because our part of Anjou is very stony and rocky. And the clay, of course, there are some plots with more clay, but it's not really the way to think about it. But indeed, I think you're alluding to something which I did very recently, which is, in a way, realizing my earlier dream. I mentioned earlier this estate I was trying to buy in Chinon, so on the other side of the Loire.
Now we get back to the beginning of the story now.
It's
good.
In full circle, but after 10 years, here again, the stars aligned a little bit. And I've just indeed acquired that estate that I was dreaming about in Chinon, near my house. And indeed, it's going to be a second baby, I would say. If Belargus is my first baby, I'm very pleased to have a second one. It will be completely different. It will be limestone, not schist. It will be Cabernet Franc, not Chenin. It will be Touraine, not Anjou. But it will be the same passion and the same vision of the Loire, which is, again, this fantastic wine region with two fantastic grape varieties and terroirs that have been identified for centuries, not years, centuries. And therefore, delighted to embark on this new journey. But this will be for a few years down the road.
You mentioned that you had two children, right?
I do, twins.
Yeah. So that's perfectly fitting. I mean, you got two new babies and you've got two children, so you could just set them up with one with the Chenin Blanc and one with the Cabernet Franc. Yeah. Now you stop.
Yeah, exactly. But exactly like with my twin. But my wife and I, when we had our twins at the beginning, it was a bit tough, and we said, okay, two is perfect, but it's enough.
We're done here now.
Same thing with the vineyards. Two is enough.
What's the time frame for the Cabernet Franc wines? Is there already? I mean, maybe you don't have yet.
It will be a bit not so quick. First, organic conversion, then working. I've got a very clear vision of what I want to produce. I'm not sure how to produce it. So the first year.
So it takes time to do some testing
the first
to see what works or not.
Yeah, the first years will be organic conversion, and then working on the winemaking to aim for what I have in mind. So a few years, couple of years.
Okay, well, it's good because you got your hands full with the Chenin Blanc as well. So
absolutely.
Maybe we wrap up with, and then maybe if people have a question still, they can drop it in the chat. So then we will pick it up. But maybe to conclude the different wines that you have. So we not every vintage you have the same portfolio, but just to summarize a little bit the wines that we have today. We were drinking the Rosé. I already mentioned also the Rouers, but maybe you can walk us through quickly the different ones that you have.
I mean, very quickly, you've got one entry cuvée, which is a blend of the smaller plots, the plots that we don't do as single plots. It's called Anjou Noir, which is a tribute to the region's name. And then it's terroir wine, so we have 9 of them. 2 on Savagnières that are very, very different. Not going into the details, but if you look at the map, which is on our website, you see each plot with their names. Godret, yeah, it's one of them. Oh, you got the full list.
No, I don't have more. Hey,
So
I'm stupid.
2 Savennières, on quart de chaume, on top of Ronceret, we do the three single plots that are on the hillside because they were the three lieux-dits originally when they created the appellation. So it's quite fun and they have different subsoils. And then in the old vineyards of Jaux, we do Treille, obviously, which is our, I would say, most exclusive cuvée. It's really the terroir that defines Belargus. Bonne Blanche, which is opposite, a fantastic terroir as well, done by many great winemakers such as Emmanuel. I saw Emmanuel earlier on connecting. And also we are introducing in 2020 for the first time a new cuvée on that part, which is opposite Les Treilles, a plot called La Gordonne. So that's it. That's 10 dry cuvées in total, and as I said, 5 sweet cuvées, but only in the good to exceptional years. So the last one was 2018, and we will see when.
And they sort of less they focus on the Chaume and on Savennières. These are the two.
Yes.
I mean, they're all still very close to each other. It's not really far from apart. But if you
you get the Savennières part, which is a bit different because it's by the Loire River. All the rest is in the Layon area, basically.
And also the soil type is different there, huh?
Oh, very different.
Yeah, of course.
But again, it's a geological chaos. So really, from one plot to the next, you can really have completely different soils.
You cannot define it as one type.
No.
If you go 5 meters or 1 meter, it can be different as well.
Exactly.
So I don't know if anybody who's watching still has a question, but we're on top of the hour. So in the meanwhile, of course, I would like to thank you very much. Oh, still we have. Do you accept students of WSAT who love to learn the grapes are really growing in reality?
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
I don't know. You want to do you accept visitors? That's maybe the question. I don't know. That's if you have time for visitors. Oh, help!
Yes, absolutely. Send us a message. Absolutely.
Very good. Help is always welcome, right? No, yeah. But you got a lot of things on your hands, and we already talked about this immense project that you've taken upon yourself, and all the things that you still need to do. Also, when it comes to the work in the vineyards, making them bio-organic, and that will take some time. I mean, you're already quite far with Chenin Blanc, but then you're moving into Cabernet Franc, where it's a different story. So for the next years, there's enough on your hands, and the attention is growing. I saw you got a new importer in the US.
That's true, yes.
Or an importer, yeah.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
also
a new one, yeah.
In the United States, is becoming the market is opening up. Which countries? Maybe final question from my side. Which countries are you exporting to at the moment?
About 35 in total. So
35
a lot.
already.
The US is the last one, but basically we have most of Europe, I would say. But also, Russia, Australia, 5 countries in Asia. So pretty in South Africa as well. Yes,
everywhere. Where they have a lot of Chenin Blanc, but they still like.
Yeah, but also in Latin America also. I mean, what is true is that Chenin is loved throughout the world. It may be a niche grape if you compare it to Chardonnay or Sauvignon, but it's loved, absolutely loved throughout the world, and it's great because it opens new relationships.
Why. Also, when it comes to food pairing, I mean, you already touched it, but very versatile, so you can go all sorts of ways with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Ivan, let's wrap it up. I don't see any more questions coming in, so we could talk for hours, but maybe I'll come back to you in a year's time, and there's always more new stuff to talk about.
Well, Niels, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored that you invited me. One thing I will
Brazil.
We do have an importer in Brazil, as a matter of fact.
Okay, very good.
It's a niche one, but we do. And I would invite you to come to see us.
Of course, I would love to.
Anjou and the Loire in general are beautiful all year long. Please come and see us one day. We will host you well.
Thank you very much, and curious to see, because like we already said, and I'll come back to the map, and then that's it. the only way to really understand is to be there or to look on the map, and then you have a full impression of what the terroirs and the vineyards and also the domains are about. So thank you, Ivan, and I wish you a good night, a good weekend, and good luck with Belargus.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody for watching. And this is the last episode, so we will be back with season 5, but I still need to think about some new guests. I'll send you over the details for Van Volksum, because
Yes,
I'm
please
sure
do.
you'll get along with Roman, and very interesting that you share the same vision. You have to conquer with Riesling on the world stage, but I'm sure you're up to it. So
we can partner
let's go
in
for
that
that
objective.
Very
Thank
good.
you so much.
Thank you, and have a good evening. Thanks everybody for watching. And
bye everybody.
well, we'll be back with the next season, but it needs to be scheduled. So just stay tuned and watch it. We're going to review also the Ronceret over the weekend, so it will be on also on the profile with my observations. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you all later.
Thanks everybody. Bye bye.